The two major providers of weight loss drugs, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, had an amazing performance over the last years. But recently their stocks got under pressure and have lost 25% in Eli Lilly's and even more than 30% in Novo Nordisk's case from their all-time highs. So I asked myself the question, is now a good time to enter a position, and which of the two companies could be the better long-term investment? And in today's video I'll break it down. I'll compare the business models of both of them, have a look at the general markets they are operating in and the weight loss market especially, and also of course look at their latest financial statements. I'll also check their valuation to see if now is a good time to buy. In the end, I'll want to answer the question, is the current dip a good buy opportunity, and which of the two companies is the better long-term investment? My name is Florian, welcome to Cashflow Maniac. First, let's get started by looking at their recent performance and then compare their business models to see where exactly the differences are. Over the last year, Eli Lilly did deliver almost 40% return, while Novo Nordisk could still return 30.25%. So Eli Lilly had a better performance in the last year. It could also beat the S&P 500 and even comes close to the performance of the Nasdaq that did deliver 48% price returns in the last 12 months. And over the last 10 years, the performance looks quite similar. Here, Eli Lilly did deliver returns of over 1000%, while Novo Nordisk comes in at roughly half of this with around 500%. So, in the last decade, Eli Lilly was the better investment, but both had a very good run and did produce great returns for their investors that were quite a bit above the returns of the S&P 500 and even the Nasdaq. But at the end of the chart, we also see that both companies did lose quite a bit of ground over the last weeks, and their stocks went down by more than 25% from their respective peaks. Both companies are operating in the pharmaceutical industry, and they are the two leading providers for drugs for diabetes like insulin and the two major players for obesity care, or what is more commonly known as weight loss drugs. They are also both putting a huge focus on R&D and innovation and are growing organically as well as through strategic acquisitions. But that is where the similarities already end. While Novo Nordisk is mostly active in rare and chronic metabolic diseases like blood and endocrine disorders, cardiovascular diseases, and in general weight-related health conditions where they also invest heavily in biologics, Eli Lilly's business model is much more diversified. They are active in a large array of fields from endocrinology, oncology, neuroscience, and immunology, with a wide range of medicines for a wide range of diseases. So, while the business model is a bit different, both are the top contenders in the weight loss segment. And this is also what I want to focus on in today's analysis. Of course, both companies also have other drugs in their portfolio and pipeline, and you should definitely take this into consideration before investing. So, let's see how much of their business these weight loss drugs even make up. Novo Nordisk gives this overview in their last earnings presentation for the numbers of the first 3 months of 2024. And here we see that obesity care, which are their weight loss drugs Wegovy and Saxenda, is their second biggest segment after GLP-1 drugs for diabetes and makes up around 21% of their revenue. Eli Lilly has the broader portfolio, and I would have expected that the share of weight loss drugs in their overall portfolio is smaller. But unfortunately, they also don't give a very good overview in their presentations. But when I crunched the numbers, this is what I found for the first 9 months in 2024, so it is exactly comparable to Novo Nordisk. And as I found, their weight loss drugs Zepbound and Mounjaro make up even 35% of the total revenue and is by far their biggest segment and seems to be even more important for them as it is for Novo. And when we look at the total market for GLP-1 drugs, and this is a slide from Novo Nordisk's last earnings presentation, they count the total number of patients for GLP-1 drugs worldwide and also for weight loss as well as diabetes. And according to these numbers, Novo is by far the market leader with a share of 65%, while Eli Lilly comes in second with 32% share. They also highlight here that the patient count has tripled over the last 3 years, which aligns with the growth and popularity of these drugs during this time frame. But I find these numbers a bit misleading. And to explain why, I need to make a brief detour and look at the differences between the products of both companies. And please bear with me while I try to explain this mix between different brand names and underlying medications. If you know this already and are familiar with all the terms, please feel free to laugh at my measly attempts to pronounce all them. So, the drugs from Novo Nordisk have the brand names Ozempic, Rybelsus and Wegovy. These are just the brand names, and all three of them use the underlying medicine semaglutide. On the other hand, we have Mounjaro and Zepbound, which are the brand names of Eli Lilly's drugs. They use a different medicine, which is called tirzepatide. And while semaglutide mimics the GLP-1 hormone in our bodies and binds to the GLP-1 receptors in our brains, tirzepatide is a bit different. It is a dual-acting ingredient and binds to the GLP-1 receptor as well as the GIP receptor. Both medicines are approved as diabetes drugs and also for weight loss drugs, and both work by stimulating insulin release, decreasing the amount of sugar made by your liver, and by slowing the movement of food through your stomach, which can help to feel fuller for longer and decrease the appetite. So, while both medicines are fairly close, you can see why I'm not fully trusting the data from Novo Nordisk, as Eli Lilly is not only mimicking the GLP-1 but also the GIP hormones. But I think it is still fair to say that Novo Nordisk has the upper hand when it comes to market share. And speaking of the market, the general obesity market is huge and still increasing. At the moment, almost 1 in 3 adults in the US are overweight, and 42% of all adults have obesity or severe obesity. And when looking at the numbers among young adults, the percentage of these obese youth has more than doubled in the last roughly 30 years. And of course, these are the people that will become the potential users of such weight loss drugs in the future. These are just the numbers from the US, but even when we look at the global deaths from obesity, we see that there is really a severe problem and the death toll is going up in all age groups. Because of these factors, the overall market for these drugs is even expected to reach $200 billion by 2031. So the target group for these medications is not going away. And as the obesity trend for young people in the US shows, their customer base is indeed still growing very quickly. What also helps them is the fact that 26% of all people taking semaglutide are regaining weight after stopping to take the drugs. A similar trend can also be seen for Eli Lilly's tirzepatide, although to a bit lower degree. So, to gain the full and lasting effect of these drugs, people will have to keep taking them and thus produce a regular and subscription-like revenue stream to their producers. And not only is the effect of Eli Lilly's tirzepatide lasting just a little bit longer with just a little bit less weight regain, a brand new study that was released last week shows that their Zepbound drug is even a bit more effective. Over 72 weeks, it helped its patients to lose 20.2% of the weight, while the users of Novo's Wegovy only lost 30.7% during the same time frame. So, Lilly's drugs seems to be just a little bit more effective all over. But in my opinion, this won't hurt Novo too much in the near future because of other factors that also play a role, like the limited availability, for example, that we'll talk about in a second. And of course, both companies are currently already developing the next generations. Eli Lilly with retatrutide, which they named Triple G, while Novo has been developing an oral semaglutide and amycretin, another oral GLP-1 drug that also shows a lot of potential. Unfortunately, with the huge demand of both of these drugs, both companies are still ramping up their production like crazy, but right now they are not so easily available and the FDA has put them on their shortage list. That means that other companies like Hims, for example, are allowed to produce generics of these drugs, even though they are of course protected by patents. And the expectation for the next years is also that more generic alternatives will become available, which will probably drive down the prices, and with this, the high margins that Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk can get for these drugs today. So, while the market is huge and both companies currently have a very strong position and a head start, I think that the market will become tougher for them and the price pressure higher as more players enter. And now I think we have a fairly good overview over the weight loss market and the drugs of both companies. So let's have a look at their financials. And let's start with their 5-year growth numbers. Here, both companies could grow their revenue very nicely with 13.3% for Eli Lilly and almost 18% for Novo Nordisk. But in EPS and free cash flow, the picture changes a bit. While they could still both grow their EPS, Novo's growth was 10 times as high as Lilly's. And in free cash flow, Eli Lilly is even down, while Novo Nordisk could still grow the cash flow by 7.7% per year. This decline is due to very high capital expenses that are coming from several investments in new plants for higher production capacity and R&D. And while Novo Nordisk is also increasing their spending for much of the same reasons, their cash flow didn't suffer too much up to now. But this might change with their planned acquisition of Catalent, where they want to spend over $16 billion. This would give them access to Catalent's 50 production sites worldwide and specifically 3 fill-finished sites in particular, which could increase their capacity for Ozempic and Wegovy very significantly. But this deal is still under heavy scrutiny, and at the moment it is far from clear if this will go through or not. Profitability-wise, Novo is also the clear winner today. They have a higher free cash flow yield right now, higher EBITDA margins, and a way higher return of invested capital. You might think now that this is also due to the high capex spending, but this is actually nothing new. The margins of Novo have been quite a bit above the margins of Lilly for the last decade, and especially return of invested capital stands out here where Lilly doesn't even come close to Novo. The balance sheet of both companies does look very nice though, but while Novo Nordisk could pay off its long-term debt with an EBITDA of around half a year, it would take Eli Lilly roughly 3 years to do so. Instead of interest payments, Novo has used their cash to reward their shareholders and has bought back 1.6% of their shares every year over the last 5 years. Eli Lilly did also buy back shares, but with a dilution of minus 0.17% on a much lower level as Novo. And we see the same picture when looking at the dividends. Novo Nordisk has with 1.3% double the dividend yield of Lilly, could grow their dividends quicker and has a lower payout ratio. In fact, the cash flow dividend payout ratio of Lilly was at even 530% last year. But this is mostly due to the low free cash flow this year. In fact, the cash flow payout ratio of Eli Lilly was at even 513%. But this is mostly due to the lower free cash flow this year. But even when assuming that the cash flow will return to the numbers from 2022, they would still have a payout ratio of 57%, which I find okay, but is still quite a bit above Novo's numbers. So in the last 5 years, Novo had the better performance, bigger margins, cleaner balance sheet and higher dividend yield and growth. But what is the expectation for the next years? And here the picture changes a bit. While analysts still expect an upside for the stock prices of both companies of 29% as of today, the EPS growth and revenue growth of Lilly should be quite a bit higher. This is also reflected in the valuations. Here, Lilly has the higher valuation compared to Novo all over the board. Of course, these valuations are definitely not cheap for both companies, and we should also take into consideration that Novo Nordisk is a European company and European companies are usually a bit lower valued than their US counterparts. But Lilly's valuation is also quite high when we compare it to its own history. While the valuation has come down a bit with the recent dip in stock price, it is still way above their 5-year averages. This might be due to the very good outlook for the next years that forecasts a much higher growth compared to the last years. But it still seems to me that the company is priced for perfection even after the recent dip. For Novo, the picture actually looks quite similar, although to a much lesser degree. While the company's valuation is also a wee bit above their 5-year averages, the difference is depending on the metrics with around 10-ish% much lower. Before we sum this up, If you liked the video and feel like it was helpful, please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on my next analysis. As a small channel, this really helps me out a lot. So thank you so much. And now back to the initial question. Which of both companies is the better weight loss play? And today I find it quite hard to answer. Novo Nordisk has the superior past performance, while the forecast for Eli Lilly seems to be quite a bit better. But then I think that the valuation of Eli Lilly is also quite stretched right now, and the good forecast is definitely already priced in even after the recent dip in stock price. But Novo is also not cheap right now, with their valuations still being above their 5-year averages. On the other hand, I think that both companies have an excellent position and will perform very well over the next couple of years and will probably be a very good long-term investment. And even if the competition gets tougher, they both have quite a head start already. But they are also investing heavily right now, which will definitely put pressure on their cash flows. Because my strategy is focusing on a high dividend growth and value companies, I like Novo Nordisk just a little bit better, but that definitely doesn't mean that Eli Lilly will be a bad investment. At the moment, I am not invested in any of them. But of course, this is also just part of the whole picture, and before investing, please do your own research and also look at the other business segments and their future pipelines. And if you're looking for another dividend investment, you should check out this video about a retail company that could grow their dividends with over 25% per year over the last 4 years. That being said, thank you so much for watching, guys, and see you in the next video.